Hey, good afternoon, y'all. It's Joe Turner again, and I'm going to talk to you today briefly about how to format your first paper using MLA formatting. A formatting style like MLA or like APA or Chicago or whichever style that your discipline might use exists so that other people can follow your research and find the things that you reference. So it's designed to hold you accountable to your sources to make sure you're accurately representing what your source says, and also enabling a reader to go and follow up on the things that you put in your papers in case that they want to do more work with that or to read what primary sources you are working from. And in fact, as a professor, much of my research is precisely that, is chasing down sources that I see other people use and seem like it might be useful. So that's why these style guides exist, is for those two major reasons. When it comes to formatting your paper, if you are more comfortable with APA, if you are more comfortable with Chicago, by all means use those. I'm going to go through MLA quickly just because it is the default in English studies and in many of the humanities, although the research that I publish is generally in Chicago style. And I think Chicago is superior, but that's neither here nor there. You'll need two things today. One is a website, the OWL, or the Online Rating Lab, put on by Purdue, their page on MLA, and you'll also need a sample paper, both of which you can find if you go on to Blackboard under Course Content Schedule. And then if you go to this final folder called SA1 Resources, you can see both of them in there if it ever loads, right? So this is the first resource, is the MLA Formatting and Style Guide. The OWL, the rating center they have at Purdue, is the oldest rating center in the world, and they have a ton of free resources there, not only on MLA, but on APA, on Chicago, on conducting research, on editing, anything you think you might need regarding writing. This is a really nice free source. And in fact, when I teach writing intensive classes, I generally use this instead of anything that costs money, because it's, in my opinion, just as good and free and available wherever you've got an internet connection. So just to make you aware of a few things, there is a general style guide. There is a page for each type of resource that you might include, each type of research, whether it be a book or a website. There's also a sample paper, sample works cited. So do make these resources useful, right? Use them as much as you can, right? So here's, for example, the sample paper, which it will tell you why it looks the way it does and explain how you do the things formatting wise that you need to do for your papers. But I'm going to walk you through that as well. But this is here, so when this class is over, you still have knowledge of this resource moving forward. The other thing we'll need is the sample paper, which is from a student wrote this for me about 4 years ago. You can see in 2016, because I am getting uncomfortably old. And this is one of the ones that I thought would be a good example for you to use as you plan your papers. So a few things to look at is the MLA header, right? And at the beginning of your first page, you should have a header that looks like this. It is double spaced, as the whole paper is double spaced. It starts with your name, and I put Studentson. It then is the professor's name, in this case my name. You can put Joe Turner, put Professor Turner, I don't really care. The third thing is the course. This is in case your professor has papers coming in from multiple courses. ENGL 300-50, that's our section this summer. And then you have the date. And notice the formatting of the date, right? If I were writing this today, I would have 17 July 2020 here, right? So notice that. You can memorize this. Every time you open a Word document for a paper for this class, I would do this header automatically just so it's there. I want to avoid confusion, because this is called an MLA header, but it does not use the header section on Word. I'm using a real computer here. I imagine if you have a Mac, it would look differently, but I hate Mac, so I don't use them. So I'm not asking you to use the header, right? You just do this in the paper, not in the header function of Word. So just because sometimes that's confusing for students who have a more advanced knowledge of the Microsoft Office suite and for whom header means something specific and technical. The second thing you'll notice is that there is a page number. It has the student's last name and then page 1. If you come down, you see it on top of page 2 and then on page 3. These are mainstays of MLA formatting and things that you'll want to do. So in order to get this name and page number up here, you want to go to Insert, and then you go to Page Number, and then I go to Top of Page, and then go down to plain number 3. Once you've got that in there, then you can simply type your last name, and it will auto-populate on every single page. Right? So that's the header. That's pretty easy. General formatting, then, you want one line break. Right? You push Enter once. On a double-spaced page, you put your title. You center justify it. Right? This header up here, you'll notice right up here, this is called left justified. You push one, enter, one line break, center justify, and you go after. This is a 2-part title. You don't have to have a 2-part title. You can have a title on one line. A single line break again, and then you tab in, right, to make this look like a paragraph. Lots of times students will want to put 2, 3, 4, 5 line breaks here, and that just looks like you're wasting time and space. So don't do that. You don't want the reader's first experience with your paper to be to give the impression that you're trying to make space, you're trying to pad. You don't want that at all. You'll notice that this particular student is writing about Chuck Palahniuk's, I think that's how you pronounce his name, Fight Club, the novel which I used to teach. It opens with a quote, and that's a fine way to do it. You will notice that here at the end of first line is what's called an in-text or parenthetical citation. So this is the next big thing that we want to talk about. So for your papers, you're either going to be talking about a short story or a poem, right? So for a short story, the Joyce Carol Oates story and the Ursula Le Guin stories don't necessarily have page numbers. So what you want to do is either print it out, and then when you draw quotes from it, just physically look on which page it was from. Or if you don't have the ability to do that, or you don't have a printer, let's say, you could just come up here and go to print, and it will show you the paper, and you can find out where it might be if you were to print it, right, if that's an option. The other thing you can do is, because these are both rather shorter works, is let's say you were writing about Ursula Le Guin's Omelas story, and you found a quote that you wanted to use. You would simply count out which paragraph it was in, count out from the beginning. Each time there's a break between bodies of text that's a paragraph, and that way you would put, let's say the quote you chose was from Le Guin's paragraph 5, you would simply put Le Guin para.5. Now, our papers will only really look at one author, so the first in-text or parenthetical citation should have that author's last name. Subsequent citations do not need that last name, right? So you can come down here and really remove that one if you so desired, right? Because there's only one text we're working from. There's no way I can get confused as a reader. Now, if you are writing from a poem, let's say you're writing about Edward Arlington Robinson's Richard Cory, you would use the line number, right? So if you wanted to quote that last line about the bullet through the head, you would say Robinson 16 because it occurs on line 16, and then subsequent references to that poem would simply have the line number in it. Now, if you're doing a poem by Robinson and comparing it to Sylvia Plath, then you would want to use the last names in each parenthetical citation just so the reader does not get confused. You should use Times New Roman, should be 12-point font, should be double-spaced, and you do not necessarily have to have a works cited page. This particular student does. You can have one if you want. You don't have to. you're only going to be writing about text that I know, so I know which version of it is that you have, et cetera, et cetera. So that is less important for this particular assignment. So that'll be wrapping up this video. It's simply about how to format it. There'll be another video coming out today or tomorrow about more tips on how to go about writing and editing that essay. All right, thanks, y'all. Have a good day.